started. Good morning. Meeting is now called to order. Ms. Gaynor, please.
Good morning. Start over here with our General Counsel. We have with us today Police Chief Dan Williams, or MSU Police Chief Dan Williams, Vice President Robert Clark, Vice President Howard Farrell, Vice President Marilyn Fillet. Chris Stovall is our controller. Here in the back corner, we have Lana Sweeten-Schultz, reporter for the Times News. Dr. David Carlston, he's chair of the Faculty Senate. We also have with us today Dr. Ray Willis and Dr. Marcy Brown Marsden. Both of those are from the College of Science and Math. We have Provost Betty Stewart. We have with us Andrea Mendoza from the Student Government Association, Jesse Brown, who's president of the SGA, Charlie Carr, athletic director, Claudia Rodriguez, who is with us from the Staff Senate today, Reagan Foster, chair of the Staff Senate, Don Fisher, director of Human Resources, and Cindy Ashlock, executive assistant to the president.
Thank you. Dr. Stewart, I believe you have some introduction, an introduction for us.
Yes. I'd like to introduce our new dean of the College of Science and Mathematics, Dr. Margaret Brown Marsden. She goes by Marcy. And I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Marcy. Marcy has a bachelor's degree in biology from the University of Dallas at Irving. She has a PhD from Purdue University. She's also completing her MBA from the Luther College of Business at the University of Dallas. Marcy comes to us with a wealth of both academic and administrative experience. She left the University of Dallas as an associate professor of biology. She also served as chair of the Department of Biology for 8 years, associate dean of the Constantine College of Liberal Arts and Sciences for 2 years, and interim dean of the Constantine College of Liberal Arts for 1 year. Marcy has an academic background in the liberal arts, sciences, and business. And so she brings us a well-rounded perspective to the university. She came to us from a search that was a year-long search, and she rose to the top of 73 applicants. So we're delighted to have her here today.
Welcome. Marcy, welcome to MSU. Dr. Lamb, Dr. Lamb is not here.
He's on his way to China.
He told me that Dan Williams was going to be here, and I thought that he was going to introduce him. And so Dan will be retiring at the end of December, and we wanted to acknowledge him and let him.
And today's his birthday.
Oh.
Today's that day where my age and my years hit that magic 80. So
But he said you wanted to say something. Do you mind going up to the end?
No, not a problem. I won't take up just a few minutes, but I just wanted the opportunity to come before the board, just tell you thank you for your support the last 5.5 years that I've been here. I think we've taken some good steps to bring Midwestern State and the police department a little further along technologically than where we were 6 years ago. Still got a long way to go. Whereas facilities, that's something we've talked about. Dr. Shipley and I recently met and visited on that. So I know the next chief will have some definite challenges ahead of him, but I would just encourage the board and the administration to continue to take the steps. We've still got a long way to go to ensure the greater safety of the students, faculty, and staff. Again, I think we've come a long way from where we were. We're never prepared for a active shooter as well as you would like to be prepared. Those are always going to cause a mass chaos situation. But again, I think we've taken some giant steps to help better prepare us and get our plans in order. I just, like I said, want to take a moment and say thank you for all the support that you've given to us, because it's been greatly appreciated. And same to the administration as well. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you. You've done a great job here
Thank
at
you.
Midwestern, and we really do appreciate what you've done, and you will be missed.
Thank you.
have fun in retirement, I know I will.
Looking forward to it.
Board members, thank you for your participation in our committee meetings yesterday. A reminder, we are being streamed live on the internet. Please silence or turn off your cell phones. We provide an opportunity for public comment concerning agenda items at the beginning of every meeting. Looks like nobody's signed up, so we'll move on. I'll take items 16, 34, and 35 together. These are the approval of the minutes of the August meetings of the board. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they will stand approved as presented. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. The executive committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. Item presented for committee approval only, 1605, committee minutes. Items presented for information only, 1606, MSU deferred maintenance reports, campus condition index, 1607, campus facilities implementation plan and construction updates. Items approved by the committee and placed on the consent agenda. Item 1608, MassCom addition construction contract. Authorize the administration to enter into a contract with Buford Thompson Construction at a guaranteed maximum price not to exceed $4.6 million as presented. 1609, athletics intramural facilities plan. Approved the modified plan presented as follows. Construct a new outdoor free play basketball court on the West Campus Annex property. Place artificial turf on the current softball field. Build a new soccer complex with an artificial turf field on the South Campus. Authorize a second artificial turf field to be placed on campus. Location to be determined, and ask the administration to study the placement of the field and schedule a special meeting of the board within the next 30 days to recommend placement. Additionally, approved a state contract for turf on the softball field, a contract for design of the new soccer complex, and financing plan for the project as presented. Item 1610, tuition revenue bonds. Authorize the administration to proceed with planning to include the issuing of requests for proposals to begin with selection of architects for the construction of a new health science and human services building, relocation of information technology and various offices into vacated space, a major renovation of Moffett Library, and at a minimum code updates in the Fane Fine Arts Center, Bowling Hall, and the Hardin Administration Building. Specific location of the new building and the offices relocated into Bridwell Hall and other vacated space on campus, as well as a more precise budget, will be recommended to the board in February. I recommend approval of this consent agenda as presented. Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda or for further discussion?
Just one additional thing on the basketball court. Is there any way that we could also get the administration to come back to us with the exact place, the right place for that, rather than just any place, or is that? I just think, like, if we were going to look at where the fields go, that'd be worth at least considering when they come back to us before we break ground.
We have a place to meet.
Okay.
Check and see if there's other.
May I ask a question to his question,
Sure.
or do we need to take it off? Are you saying that the place as presented, you want us to reconsider it?
I just want it to be considered in the whole plan, since we're going to be
Got it.
looking at the whole,
Yes.
and if you're going to reevaluate it, I just want us to
Okay.
have looked at it all.
So we'll take that bullet point off the consent agenda.
We'll just take that whole item off the consent agenda and then revote in a few minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Is that 1609?
1609 will come off.
Okay.
Okay. I recommend approval of this consent agenda as modified. Would anyone like to remove any other items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Do we need to handle this now, or okay.
If we just modify the motion just to include to construct a new outdoor free play basketball court with the location to be determined as part of the additional planning.
How about this? Why don't we, Sandy, read this to you and see if you think this works, okay? Drop bullet point 1, construct a new outdoor free play basketball court, move it down. Place artificial turf on the current softball field, build a new soccer complex with an artificial turf field on the South Campus, authorize a second artificial turf field, and construct a new outdoor free play basketball court on the west. Strike that part. to be placed on campus location to be determined, and ask the administration to study the placement of both the field and the outdoor basketball court and schedule a special meeting of the board within the next 30 days to recommend placement.
That's perfect.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I feel forcing them to go to 30 days when we have to announce ahead of time and all these other things, and everybody has schedules, if it were 31 or 32 days, would it be appropriate to say when they're ready, but we anticipate that being within a certain period of time?
Reasonable amount of time.
Reasonable amount of time? Would that be?
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't want to have a meeting and they're not ready.
Agreed. So let's replace next 30 days with a reasonable. All right? So, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Gibbons, could you please present the Academic and Student Affairs Committee report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee met yesterday. Our report is as follows. Item 16-11, the committee minutes were presented for committee approval only and were approved. Item 16-12, the university dashboard, and item 16-13, the enrollment report for the fall of 2015, were presented for information only. Item 16-17 was the admissions policy changes. That was approved by the committee but not placed on the consent agenda, and we will discuss momentarily. The following items were placed on the consent agenda. Item 16-14, the December 2015 graduating class. The committee approved the list of candidates for graduation. Item 16-15, the academic calendar 2016-2017. While there were some issues, the committee discussed that and felt that we had the best schedule that we could have, and that was approved and placed on the consent agenda as presented. Item 16-16 was a change of international studies major and minor. That was approved, changing the title of this major and minor to global studies. Item 16-18, MSU Policies and Procedures Manual. The committee approved the new policy regarding consensual relationships as presented, and we desire that these do be placed on the consent agenda. I recommend approval of this consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll now consider item 16-17, admissions policy, so that we can get a motion on the table and have further discussion. Could I have a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
Second? Okay, discussion.
Son?
Yeah.
I'll mull this over after we discussed it yesterday, and after considering it, I've come down in support of Linwood's objection to it for a couple of reasons. The reason that Dr. Lamb gave yesterday about an unfair disadvantage not being able to take a prep test, my understanding, which may be incorrect, is that scholarships are available for those prep tests. So I don't think that's a valid argument. And where I finally came down against it is, it seems like the reason we're doing this is because everybody else is doing it. Well, to me, that's not a valid reason. I think all we're doing is lowering standards, and basically, we're accepting students that are in the top 25%. My daughter's a perfect example. She was not in the top 10%. She was in the top 25. She applied, they're happy to have her. I don't think we turn down very many applicants anyway if they're qualified. So I don't think we're going to be turning anybody away by leaving it at 10%. But I just think we're lowering our standards. We don't need to. We don't need to just because everybody else is. And I am opposed to the motion.
Anybody else?
I do have a question regarding the branding. Will that change in any way? I think currently we're considered a selective school. Would that interfere with anything?
I don't see how it would, no. I think what I've heard Keith talk about is more efficiency of staffing. And what they did is they took 4 years and realized that they're processing applications with a lot of staff attention to them that subsequently does not need to be paid, that could be paid in other ways to our class. So I heard him talking about the efficiency it would free up if you could automatically accept the people we're ultimately accepting anyway. We could then shape the profile of the class, use the admission counselors and others' energies to shape the profile of the class in a different way. That being said, you're absolutely right. Perception is important, and we have a perception as a selective institution, and that could dilute it. So it's a good thing to think about.
Well, we're still accepting the same students, where it's not automatically accepting.
That is true, and that is where the staff time comes in. And so in times of difficult budget decisions, we're operating with a shoestring staff, and I think it was the staff efficiency in part that led him to study this to begin with.
Okay.
If I could pose my argument too a little differently, Keith's argument, Dr. Lamb's argument was that there were socioeconomic imbalances that we were going to help correct here, but that isn't true. I mean, actually, we're looking at all these students, and if there's ever an area that I think we ought to spend the money and not try to have a policy and cut it, I think this is the area. I think our students, when they send an application, deserve somebody looking at it, evaluating it, and looking at each student individually, particularly when we're trying to level socioeconomic differences. And I feel like an automated policy gives the impression that we've lowered our standards and actually removes what we talk about trying to prevent here, and that's this imbalance. I think we are a better university if we spend the money here and have people actually look at the applications and not try to automate it, and that's the reason I'm opposed to it.
Anybody else?
I guess the only thing I would ask is that if there's, I mean, Keith didn't really give us that, but if there was a substantial financial impact, that he's really looking at it saying, like, this is, we're not getting to all the applications that we want to because we don't have that personnel, we don't have the resources available, then at least as a board we could evaluate it and say, fine, we're willing to Linwood's point, be able to invest more money to be able to get them the resources necessary to be able to get all those students in. I guess that's where I agree with you. I don't want to lower our standards. We worked steadily to bring them up. But I do think that I want them, if we're going to say that, we need to be able to hopefully give them the resources available to process those students. We want them here. If they're not getting to them, then that'd be a concern for me.
Anybody else? Let me make a comment, because again, I'm kind of, you guys know I'm not a fence sitter, but I'm kind of sitting on the fence. I've been thinking about this one. I will tell you, I'm inclined to say that I think we should do this, but my reasons are maybe a little different than most. As far as the cost goes, I was kind of noodling on that a little bit last night. You know, all-in cost for an FTE, probably call it 60 to 70,000. And is that high?
Yeah, that'd be high.
Well, I'm talking about benefits, everything, all included. I mean, there is a cost. 50. Call it 50. So if we're talking 2 FTEs, you're talking 100. I mean, my question is, do you redeploy that $100,000 somewhere else if, in fact, we're bringing those students in anyway? I personally don't see it as a lowering of standards because, as Keith didn't explore this a lot, but I've been kind of paying attention to some of this. This idea of reviewing folks without the standardized testing has been evolving over the last 3 to 5 years, maybe longer.
Yes.
And as he pointed out to us yesterday, COPLAC institutions, for the most part, are looking, if they're in a state where they can do this, looking at their students holistically. And I think this will give us an opportunity to begin to look at our students holistically. We're in the state of Texas, as he pointed out yesterday, law says we must admit the top 10%, period, into discussion. There isn't a holistic view. What this does is it gives us an opportunity to really begin to look at each application. Yes, we're going to admit the top 25%, but I think that what it gives them an opportunity is to guide those students in the right direction to where they need to be in the process. So for me, it's I get the arguments that you guys are having, but I'm more inclined to say, I think we do this and we begin to evolve as an institution to the point of looking at those students on a holistic basis. But that's just me. So, anybody else have anything?
I just make the comment, I don't see it that way, Sean. It looks like to me that when you automatically admit the top 25%, those students are not going to be looked at. So there's nothing holistic about that.
I agree with that, but my point was, and I didn't make it very well, it gives us an opportunity to get them into the system quicker and begin to get them to where they need to be as a student. So they're not hung up in the system, you know, wondering where they're going to be. And if we've given them an opportunity to choose Midwestern first, we've chosen them, then maybe if there's 3 or 4 universities on their list and we've let them in, maybe they pick us first. I mean, I think about my kids when they were going through the process. You know, they had my 2 younger kids both had 2 or 3 schools on their list, and you know, if they got a note back from one that, you know, that says, "Hey, I want you," so that's my point. And I didn't make.
Well, as an applicant, that if they're in the top, they know they're in the top 25%. I mean, they know they're going to be in, aren't they?
Well, they do, but think about an 18-year-old kid. I mean, they're not. I don't think they think like that. I mean, we do as adults, but 18-year-olds, you know, is still getting that letter back saying, "I want you," and that's just my view. So, I mean, there's arguments both ways. So, okay, anybody else?
Will this hinder those that are not in the top 25%? Will that make it harder for them to get in?
I don't think so. I mean, Dr. Shipley?
No, I think it would be the usual. I completely see both sides of this. The compelling argument for me in bringing it forward was that practice already indicates that we go through a lot of study of these portfolios, and we end up accepting all but 6 or 7 of those students. And that's a lot of staff time for something we're going to do anyway. Now, that's merely the surface. I don't know what's in that study and how that shapes the student's performance, but something in the equation helps those students succeed, and that's the most important thing. It's not, for me, where the cutoff line is, but that we bring students who are academically successful here. So I see both sides of it.
Dr. Shipley, you mentioned the difference in cost. What would the difference be in processing time for a student that now as opposed to if they're automatically in?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Is Gay on here? So Keith didn't send a representative. Keith would know that, and he didn't send a representative.
Dr. Stewart, do you have the numbers of how many students a year are roughly in
It's
that
not a
mix?
cost, I don't have a cost number,
Right.
I just have the number of
What's the
students.
number?
We could, if you told from the side, you'll need to go to the list.
I'm not talking.
No, the only, I have Keith's notes, and what he said was that 14 students would have matriculated over their 4-year study if they had the top 25% instead of the top 10%.
So you're saying but that's not the question. The question is, I think what we're being asked is, if you take the top 10% that are automatic, how many more students are in the gap between 10 and 25? And how much staff time is needed to process those students? And that number's not there.
No.
You're saying what I thought I heard Keith say, which is they were all processed in over 4 years. They identified 14 students who would not have been accepted.
No.
Who were accepted. Who were accepted.
Yes.
Right. No, they identified 14, let's get this right, they identified 14 students.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm scratching my head
Yeah,
on
that's
that
not
one.
right. I think it's not accepted. So if they had taken the top 25% automatically, there were
We would have 14 more
we
kids.
would have had 14 more students. So the case he was making is this is not about adding students.
Right.
That's correct.
It's about in my opinion, staffing efficiency. So you can either staff up and keep it the way it is, or you can work on communication to counter a misperception that we're lowering standards.
Well, the reason for my question is to Sean's point, we want to get them approved as quickly as we can. Is there that much time difference if we don't?
Well, there's another factor in here. It's 14 students who did not qualify on the SAT scores and the 25%. So I don't, without a number of people, I'm kind of, I don't know. I mean, is that
Well,
really
but I agree with that, but the argument I keep focusing in on is the time that the
Admissions counselor.
the commission, the admissions counselors are spending on these.
Well, that's my question. How much time is that? But we don't know.
The answer to that.
Well, we can table it and go find out. Matt could go down and ask Gaon. We could get that answer to you if we have other business to do. Because it's an important question.
It is.
Very important.
Well, we do have a motion in the second, so we do need to vote, and we can vote, and it could fail, and we could table it, or it could pass. So it's, how do we want to handle that, Debbie?
Well, and we have to remember that it's not just that piece. There are two other pieces to the recommendation. So, what are they? They are the homeschool students and those students that don't have a class ranking.
Well, you can rescind the motion, we can table it.
Go for it now.
Could rescind the motion and then table it until later meeting.
Who made the motion?
I think I did.
Yes, Tiffany and Nancy. Okay, good with rescinding.
Okay, we can rescind it. Okay.
All right. Yeah, then we're gonna, so the motion has been rescinded. We will table this until we get additional information.
We're going to find the admissions director.
Fantastic. All right, so, Mr. Bernhardt, please present the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finance Committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. The item presented for committee approval only, 16-19 committee minutes. Items presented for information only, 16-20 summaries of the financial support, 16-21 the fiscal year 15 quasi endowment fund report. Items approved by the committee and placed on the consent agenda. 16-22 the financial reports, except the monthly financial reports for July 2015. 16-23 the investment reports, except the fourth quarter 2015 investment report. Item 16-24, fiscal year 2015 and 2016, items $50,000 and under, ratified the change as presented. Item 16-25, the personnel report and changes in fiscal year 15 budget, ratifying the changes as presented. Item 16-26, personnel report and changes in financial year 16 budget, ratified changes as presented. And last, 16-27, funding the marketing study. Academic expansion authorizes funding of $90,000 for the study for a designation tuition reserves as presented. Chairman Hessing, I recommend approval of these items on the consent agenda.
Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Mr. Sanchez, please present the audit compliance and management review report.
Thank you, Chairman Hessing. The Audit Compliance and Management Review Committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. Item presented for committee approval only, 16-28 committee minutes. Items presented for information only, 16-29 historically underutilized business year-end report for 2015. 16-30 contract management activities year-end report 2015. 16-31 audit and compliance activities. Items removed from the agenda were 16-33 affiliation agreements between MSU and the MSU Foundation, Inc. and the MSU Charitable Trust. Item approved by committee and placed on consent agenda 16-32 internal audit charter. Approve the charter as presented. Chairman Hessing, I recommend approval of this consent agenda item as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Since we have no items to be, is that correct? Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, item 1636, Presidential Performance and Compensation Review. Each year, the board evaluates the president's performance in the February meeting. Well, since Dr. Shipley will only be in the first 6 months of February, I suggest we defer this evaluation until May. Any objections to this course of action? Okay, none? Great, and we will defer until May. You have an item for your meeting?
All right.
That's the only one.
There you go. Item 1637, the President's Report. The first presentations will be made by faculty, staff, student government, and athletics. So I guess, David, we'll start with you, and then Suzanne, if you want, it's your report.
No, I'll just do the end.
Okay.
Right,
But I
you
mean,
just follow, you
okay.
just follow each other.
All right, so David, why don't you start us off?
Sure. This is the time of the semester when faculty have their heads down and are plowing through everything. So there's not too much to report at this point. I do want to mention a couple of different things and hopefully not muddy the waters. First of all, the faculty is really appreciative of the way the survey results have been handled in terms of the dissemination of the results, in terms of the presentation of kind of a revised strategic priorities and an opportunity to comment on that. You know, in the survey results that were presented yesterday, you can see that communication and transparency was one of the major concerns. These kinds of procedures in terms of sharing results, soliciting broadly the input as things are moved forward certainly is going to be a step in the right direction for those numbers to change. So we're very appreciative of that process. Also, in terms of just responsiveness from the administration's perspective, I don't know if folks are aware, but one of the, as we discussed the concealed and carry concern last year, is one of the arguments about the concealed and carry law was that it would make campuses safer. In that discussion, faculty suggested that maybe the installation of a peephole on their office door so they could see who was outside the door when the knock came, especially if that was on a weekend or late at night, would also improve safety. Would be kind of a small step in that regard. The administration was very responsive to that, took care of that in honestly a surprisingly and quick way. So we certainly appreciate that. I think I'll be, again, as honest as I can here, right? Kind of following up on that theme, the Concealed and Carry Committee is doing a great job. Obviously, faculty are concerned about that. There's a wide range of faculty opinions, probably as broad as it is anywhere else on campus or off of campus in terms of how that law should be implemented. I am proud of our faculty in some ways. You may have read in newspapers or other news reports of faculty at other universities walking out or retiring or leaving universities in protest of this particular law. Our faculty realize that it is law, right? And that there's nothing we can do about it, and we're actively working to implement that the best way that's possible. The third thing that I want to bring up, I was really happy to hear the discussion about the dashboard. I think including those dashboard numbers is a very useful tool to kind of gauge the health of both the incoming class and the graduating class and the university as a whole. One suggestion that the faculty would make that would be useful in terms of tracking on the dashboard, and again, I don't want to muddy the waters with the conversation that you all just previously had, but there are a large percentage of students that are admitted to Midwestern at this point that are admitted that don't meet the actual academic requirements. This is a useful number to track for a couple of reasons. Certainly from a faculty perspective, there's a large difference between a classroom of 80 academically prepared and 80 unacademically prepared students in terms of the types of teaching that you can do, in terms of the level of burden in delivering the course material at a university level. Right now, that number, I don't have the exact number because we never hear it on campus, but floats somewhere between 40 to 50% of our students are coming in below our academic requirements. So that is a huge number. I don't want to be misspeaking, but that's the number that we've been told. So when you've got that percentage of students, right, we had a nice presentation a few board meetings ago about the writing center right on campus. Even academically prepared students, right, a good percentage of those students are going to benefit from the writing center. But if you're bringing in 900 students, roughly a third to a half of those are below our minimum requirements. There's no way that writing center can support and work with all of those students.
I don't understand what you're saying. Are you saying that we're admitting people that even though they meet our standards, we're admitting people that don't meet our standards?
Right. So, for example, the process is you don't meet the criteria for automatic admission. We'll go ahead and look at it and we'll say, okay, we're going to let you in, but these are kind of the conditions for you to stay at the university. So,
And that number is 40%?
Or a little bit higher, a little bit north of 40.
Leah is here, so
That is probably a.
You have to go up to the front.
And Leah, please introduce yourself. I'm Leah Hickman. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions. Good morning, everybody. And I would say we do have two categories of admissions. We have an unconditional requirement, and then we do have what we call the by review requirement. The by review are students who, of course, don't meet the unconditional, and there are some conditions placed on them if we're able to get those admitted to the institution for their first year here on campus. Even though we admit those students, if it is around the 40%, that doesn't mean they all enroll. That's just admissions based on that information.
Sure. But I think that's a reasonable number to track. One, it certainly addresses one of the other items that we saw in terms of the survey, in terms of resources to deliver the task that you're given. Certainly from a faculty perspective, that's important. Also from an academic support perspective, right? If we don't know how many of our students are coming in, or if we're not tracking regularly or regularly talking about these folks that are coming in and kind of this conditional admission, then we don't really know the amount of tutoring that we need or the service delivery that we can provide for them.
I want to make sure I understand that 40% roughly is coming in that unacceptable to the
by review. So,
by review.
Correct. Their rank, their GPA,
okay.
their SAT, any of those.
Correct. Correct. But what I'm understanding that out of that 40%, what percentage actually come in?
Well, just for example, for fall 14 class, for the by review students, we admitted 147 by review, but 47 enrolled that were top 25%.
So less than 50%.
Yes,
which
sir.
is fine. So even if that's a 15 or a 20% that actually show up on campus, that's a number we need to be keeping track of so that we can have academic support sufficient for them so that we could also kind of track what the burden is.
But let me ask a question, because to me, that's a little bit different than what we were talking about before.
It is. It's very different. And
Because
I don't, like I said, I don't want to muddy things.
Megan actually brought this up yesterday about the tutoring center, the academic support center. It's something that I've talked a lot about at this board table. And to me, that's a big deal. We got to get that done. But from an admission standpoint, these by review students, that goes back to what Keith was talking about yesterday. You're looking at their applications on a holistic basis and making a decision about those young people to come to this university because we're going to, I don't want to say it this way, but it's going to come out this way. Take a chance and have those students excel at Midwestern State University. And because we don't have a tool for them to excel, a tutoring center, an academic support center, then we need to fix that. But that's a little different conversation, in my opinion, than the 25%.
Certainly, exactly. No, exactly. And what I'm saying is I didn't want to muddy the waters. This was on our thing. I think it's important on the dashboard that we know the amount of students that we're bringing in so that we can size the academic support center, that we can provide the resources for those students.
So if I'm understanding this, and I'm trying to follow this through, we're starting at 40, we accept roughly half of them, so we're actually 20% of our incoming students. Out of that 20%, what makes it past the first year? How many makes it past the first year?
Well, as far as tracking that, I mean, they're still in with the main freshman retention rate.
Correct.
We did look at their GPA compared to just the entire student population GPA, just to see how they're tracking along. And like for the fall 14 students, the average MSU GPA of all students that we admitted was a 2.66, and these students ended up with a 2.70. So they excelled a little bit higher. So they were saying, and then in fall 13, the average MSU GPA was a 2.71, and then the by review students were 2.59. So they're staying really close to what the average GPA is of these.
But I think what Dr. Carlson's speaking to is that it requires a lot of work on a professor's part.
I understand that.
But public education is about both sides of a spectrum, where you have highly gifted and where you have students who need more help. The question is, when do you upset that balance? And that's what the faculty really wants, more information on tracking, and it's
Just tracking.
very important question.
I'm not suggesting
you'll
any
feel-
changes in process. I'm
Right.
not suggesting any, nothing along those lines, other than I think that it's an important number for us to keep track of.
And I think we made the point yesterday that graph, that tracking piece should be updated for additional information as we see fit. And I think that that's one of the things we ought to make sure we're monitoring.
Agree.
Certainly. And I think from a faculty perspective, when you talk about perception of if you're changing admission processes or whatnot, I think that will be much more readily received regardless of how you move, as long as we know that we're tracking kind of the characteristics of that incoming class.
You know, something to think about, and again, I don't want to muddy the waters either, but if we approve the 25%, okay, so if we say, look, we're gonna take the top 25 and that's it, it gives the admissions counselors an opportunity to spend more time on a holistic basis on those by review students, so that we make the right decisions as a university on those students. In my opinion, it's more likely that you're going to make a mistake, if there is such a thing, in that process if that pool is bigger. But that's just me.
Well, let me add, though, that something that's come up in this discussion is we have a criteria and students submit. Obviously, 40% or whatever the number is are submitting, even though our criteria says you won't be accepted, they're obviously submitting. If we lower the bar and say we automatically admit you, we have no way of knowing at this point how many more will come in under the automatic bar who now do not submit because there is a bar.
That's a good point.
I mean, that's...
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So we don't really know exactly what's going to happen there. That bothers me a lot. It is lowering the standards.
It would certainly make that number drop significantly. It would be harder to track the preparedness. So anyway, so that would just be kind of a recommendation from the faculty side, is that if we're looking for additional information on that dashboard, that we look at those conditional conditions. Along with that, the faculty is super excited about the first year experience. The faculty sees that as an opportunity to help all students coming into Midwestern, especially the conditional folks. Dr. Clark is coming to Faculty Senate at our next meeting to talk about how that process is going. There's a large committee that's working on it. Certainly the process is robust, and we're pleased with that. I think there's some growing concern from a faculty perspective, and actually maybe not a concern, but a desire that first year experience certainly include an academic component of it. There are faculty that I talk to faculty that say they have to spend, an American government course, for example, they make them write a paper, and they have to spend 2 days, 2 class days, sometimes 3 class days, just to talk about plagiarism and what plagiarism is and how to use actual resources, right? So going from Snapchat, not really a resource, Wikipedia, not the step up in the right direction, right? You need to go a little bit beyond that, but they're spending 2 or 3 class periods of their government course to teach them just basic concepts about academic work at the university level that kind of from a faculty perspective we would love to infuse in this first year experience, so that students are can make that transition from high school, which with my own kids, I have one daughter in high school right now, and the way that you teach in high school, or the way that the kids are being taught, especially those outside of the AP courses or the pre-AP courses, is 180 degrees different than what happens at the university, right? So if a kid in high school is relatively successful, being given a worksheet, reviewing the worksheet, the exam is the worksheet. If you miss questions on the worksheet, you get to correct them for point, and they're relatively successful. When you come to the university level and you're expected to come to class 3 hours a week, take in lecture, go back and take your $200 textbook, read it, and understand that material, it's a huge transition in terms of what's expected of them. When your essays and the content, not necessarily just the writing, the grammar obviously doesn't change, but the way that you think and you present your ideas is significantly different. So there's a huge desire from the faculty side that this first year experience has an opportunity to include some of these academic components so that we can train them up in that course so that they can be more academically successful across the entire So we're very excited to work with Dr. Clark and offer any kind of support. We certainly have faculty on that committee. They report to the Senate on a regular basis. So we're very excited about that. I think that's a huge step in the right direction for the university in terms of retention rates. Any questions? I'll field some questions before I turn time over to Dr. Willis, who has some more exciting stuff and can explain what the flash drives are in front of you. It's not work, I promise. Great. Well, I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Willis, who's a tech graduate.
Tech graduate.
Exactly.
You gonna put it up, or do you want me to?
Do you want me to set it for you? It's right there.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Before I forget, the USB jump drive there is actually pictures of Dalquist that I put together, so that you have an opportunity to look to see really more of what we've got. Usually, this is a very abbreviated talk that I do at other universities, and so I'm going to make this one short, and I've eliminated quite a few pictures. So, oh, I can do it. I've got a long hand here. A little bit of background about how I got here. I actually did a non-traditional route of, I did 9 years in the Navy when I was 20 years old, and actually started my freshman year at Tarleton State University in 1997. And then I stayed there and got my master's, dealing with prescribed burns and how quickly reptiles actually go into an area around Del Rio, Texas. And when I decided that I liked college so much that I wanted to stick around a little bit longer, I decided to look for PhD programs, and my professor, Dr. Sudman, said, well, you're going to have to switch to genetics because that's the only way you can get a job. There's not any field jobs out there. So with that, I decided I wanted to work on something pretty exciting, and I thought I'd go with crocodiles. So naturally, I went to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas, which is actually one of the places that are renowned for crocodilian research, believe it or not. Dr. Dinsmore, who's the chair of biology, actually collected a lot of them at LSU. So not to bore you with all this, but basically what I do is I compare genetics and how the animals are related to each other. And that's what I did from about 2002 to 2006, which is when I actually graduated. Then I moved on to my postdoc, which was at the medical school, because I really wanted to see what these mutations actually did. And so I studied this guy, the sodium potassium pump, and how these actual mutations actually affect how well they do their job. While I was doing all this, though, every chance I could get, I went out to the desert with all my mammalogy friends, even though I considered myself a herpetologist. I really like the desert environment, and of course, crocodilians don't really give you that opportunity to do that. So I did a lot of work around South Texas, Elephant Mountain, which is south of Alpine and Marfa, Texas. Similar to the environment here, but of course, this is Dalquist, and this is actually one of the reasons why I came to MSU. This was the actual primitive site we have here, and this is up until this summer where we spent everything, or our time doing the research. The little lean-to there is really all it is a shed since about 1996, where we've had this property given to us by Dr. Dalquist. I brought in my graduate students here, and we average a trip, or at least when we started, 8 times a year. It's 9 hours down, 9 hours back to get up. So on the weekends, we're doing about 24 hours worth of work. Graduate students are really the reason why I got here, not only to get out to the desert, but to actually show these guys what to do and hopefully impart some education to them and let them succeed in their career. Again, I started at MSU in 2012 and quickly got on quite a few grad students. I actually chair right now 6 graduate students. These 5 here are actually scheduled to graduate within the next year, either May, summer, or in the fall time period. I also chair, or I'm on committees of 5 other graduate students in the biology department and 1 at Texas Tech right now also. I've already graduated 2 of them that were unrelated to Dalquist, but one I'm working on bobcats and the other one working on fossils around Seymour, Texas. These guys here, as far as projects go, Will Stewart up there on the left is actually working on small mammal surveys, so he's collected a lot of rodents, both up top and in the erosional badlands. I've got Sarah and Gisela that are working on the morphology and genetics of a canyon lizard there that's probably hybridizing. So we're going to try to figure out that mess that's going along. Erica is actually working on carnivores. And then Matt is actually working on bats and the parasites that those guys are found on. He's actually interviewing Tuesday for a PhD position with one of my friends to see if he can continue his studies on it. Obviously, you guys know that we have a new research station. We really appreciate it. It's really able to enlarge what we do, both in comfort with Wi-Fi, showers, things like that we haven't had in quite a while, but more importantly to be able to get people down there longer. So some of the things we're doing with that, we bring other university professors in, other researchers, and we're also planning in the summer of doing a desert ecology course for graduates and undergraduates. And we're also doing a reptile survey with the Texas Herpetological Society to get them in there so that we can really find out what's going on down there. Makes it a lot more convenient to be able to see what's going on. And not having to suffer near as much, because a lot of people don't like the primitive camping that I love so much. One of the awesome things about Dalquist is actually 2/3 of the property is what's called the erosional badlands. Sometimes you hear it as the devil's playground. It actually offers a unique ecology and has different animal communities that actually inhabit this that won't actually inhabit these uplands that I was kind of used to with my other previous work. So the first thing that I actually wanted to do was see what's actually out there, and I used motion detector cameras. I put 10 of them down in the river systems that have a tendency to flood, but they're also like super highways for all these different animals. And I knew that we had some invasive species that were coming in, and I wanted to figure out what actually we have. We have these guys that are similar to longhorns, but they're actually a Mexican breed crossed with domestic cattle that are coming in quite a bit. More importantly, we actually have a lot of burrows, which I don't have time to go into. Let's just say that they're really bad for the environment. And we have those guys coming in and they're doing a lot of destruction. Problem with deserts is when you start getting overgrazed and destruction is it takes a long time for them to recover. We have also an invasive species called an aoudad, which is a really cool animal that's really prevalent around that area also. And that's one of the things that people are trying to see what impact that they actually have on those individuals. Up here is probably one of my favorite pictures. We have a large community of mountain lions, which actually come down to the same place that we're checking our cameras during the afternoon, evenings. Pretty much anytime we're down there, somebody like that is probably watching us. So I've seen about 11 different cats on different cameras, and I think I've got a few pictures for you guys to see. So again, Erica is actually doing the carnivores now, and we're still looking for a black bear that should show up anytime because they're actually at the Big Bend National Park, and males have a tendency to disperse, so that's one of our to-do list of what we really want to see. With that, I know it's a really short presentation, but I wanted to give time to ask for you guys to ask any questions you might have.
You mentioned that you used to go about 8 times a year down to Dalquist. Now that we have the new center, what's your projected number of times?
This year we were scheduled to do 24 trips. The graduate students are a lot more independent now, so I don't have to go with them as much, and we use it quite a bit more. We also have the geology department that's coming in. University of Texas has a professor that comes there on a yearly basis, and he'll really enjoy it. This will be his first year to come to see that, and plus I have other university professors coming in. I try to make 8 to 9 trips, minus November and December for the holidays, because my wife doesn't really appreciate me going camping all the time. Yes, sir.
Do we do anything to impact these changes you're talking about, or are we just observers?
We're just observers. Big Bend Ranch State Park tried to eliminate burros a few years ago, and there's a real public perception that they're really cute animals and that we want to preserve them. They actually think that they have been around for a long time. It's part of the natural ecology, and the truth is they're actually released or have been released by ranchers that either can no longer contain them or no longer want them. There's no natural predators anymore since we've eliminated the black bear. Burros actually can do the same thing. There's no natural predators for those guys. Black bear, again, are the only predators that can really do those. Mountain lions actually have been killed by burros. So, yes, sir.
It's like the wild hogs, we got the wild hog problems here, same down there?
We don't have the wild hogs on Dalquist because there's really not enough water. About 30 miles north of us, I've seen them cross, and it's a little wetter. There's a little river system that's a bit more permanent there, so they're around the area. But for us, it's a little too dry for them, which I guess is a good thing. Yes.
What steps are undertaken to guarantee student safety with lions and bears and things?
We always go in pairs. You got to be big like me. We go in pairs. Really, the biggest danger of this place is not necessarily the mountain lions, but really injuring your feet, sprained ankles, broken legs, things like that as you're going down the canyon.
You are not making me feel better.
Well, it is a dangerous place. I educate them. Again, when I first bring graduate students in there, I'm always present. And the guys that I actually have out there right now have been doing hunting and that type of stuff for many years before I got them. So it is an educational process. Running out of water and emergencies really are what you have to really pay attention to. We actually have a book that we're starting on that'll have some emergency contingencies. That's hit or miss. As you know, you never think of those emergencies until it happens. We had a flat on a tire one time, and they couldn't get the lug nuts off. And we're 50 miles from the nearest town, and I'm like, well, you better work on that, because basically that's all your choice is get that off, or drive a flat tire 50 miles. So again, something you would have never thought of it happening, other than I told the motor pool that, hey, let's not do the impact wrenches on those as much so that we can actually get those off when we need to change. Yes, sir.
Do you carry firearms just when you're threatened?
I actually have considered it. The truth of it is I do about 12 miles of hiking on a Saturday when I actually get down there. And as far as, I'm not really worried about the animal wildlife as much as I'd probably be worried against people, illegals, drug runners, those types of things. Our area is actually so remote that if they go in there, they're really messing up. That's not the easiest route to go someplace else. I mean, you can easily get lost in the locality. So really the danger is pretty minimal on that.
How are we publicizing this to other people besides MSU that want to?
I actually do quite a few talks at universities. I did a talk last month at Cameron. I've done Howard Payne University. I'm speaking at Texas Tech because of my previous research there. We also publish papers. The 5 graduate students I've got, at least 6 or 7 publications are going to come out of that. Plus I have a couple of publications that I'm going to do. Again, Erica actually came to me because one of my professor friends knew what I was doing and knew the place. I go to Texas Society of Mammalogy and other meetings, and I'm inventing T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. People know what I do. I think it's a great commodity for MSU because it's one of our selling points that actually separate us from some of these smaller universities or universities that are equivalent. Tarleton State, Dr. Sudman was my mentor. He's the chair there. He's always calling me up. He wants to come over, bring his mammalogy group. So it's getting pretty well known, and now it's getting trickier. We want to see how we want to use it without it getting overused. So that's actually one of our concerns. Since we're 9 hours away, there are actually universities that are closer and would really like to go more often. So that's kind of what we're considering right now is policies on that. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Good morning. Before I begin, I didn't realize Chief Dan was going to be acknowledged today, and so on behalf of the staff, I would like to acknowledge Chief Dan for the work that he's done. His care and concern for not only our students, but our faculty and staff has been amazing, and he will truly be missed, so thank you for that. The Staff Senate has been very active this fall semester, participating in a number of initiatives on campus. I want to echo a lot of the comments that Dr. Carlson made about the Modern Think survey. Staff has been very involved. I've been personally involved in seeing the results and talking to Dr. Shipley about the future and the direction of this university, and it's very much appreciative. We encouraged, as a Staff Senate, for all of the staff to participate in the survey, and I am along with you all, I'm very encouraged by the 80% response rate from our faculty and staff. We canceled our November meeting to encourage all of staff and their limited time right now to attend the sessions that happened yesterday. So I saw a good turnout yesterday morning. I hope we had an equally good turnout yesterday afternoon. So in addition to that, we look forward to the changes. We look forward to the things that come from the information from the survey. Staff Senate has also been heavily involved in the Campus Carry initiative. We have a number of staff members representing different areas of our campus. We are concerned about the ways that it will go, but Dr. Fideli has done a wonderful job taking in as much information, not only from the campus, but from the community as well. And we look forward to the information that will come out of that. In October, we announced the recipients of the Jesse W. Rogers Staff Senate Scholarship for the fall semester. We acknowledged 2 benefit-eligible staff members to receive a $250 scholarship each semester. For the fall semester, Jeanette Perry from University Development and Elizabeth Rogers from Human Resources received those Staff Senate surveys. Another initiative we try to do to acknowledge and celebrate contributions from staff members is we have a You Make a Difference award where people have an opportunity to acknowledge staff members that go above and beyond, not only for students but for other departments in the work that they do. In August, we acknowledged Elizabeth Rogers and Courtney Grimes, both from Human Resources, for the work that they do, and Claudia Rodriguez from Housing and Residence Life, who you will get to meet in just a minute. In September, Darla English from the Registrar's Office, Matthew Murphy from Information Technology, along with Marcus Hill and Randy Kirkpatrick. And in October, Pete Martinez from the Clark Student Center was acknowledged for his work that he does with alumni relations. But at this time, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to bring a staff member for you to meet so you could learn about not only the work that they do, but tell you a little bit about Claudio. I actually got to meet Claudio when I was working in housing when he was a student when he first came to Midwestern. And it's wonderful to get to know him as a colleague. Claudio was nominated for a You Make a Difference award by Cammie Dean for his work during New Student Orientation this summer. Cammie wrote, "During More, Claudio stepped in and helped translate for a set of parents attending. Claudio went out of his way to help make More a successful experience for a lot of our Spanish-speaking parents. He did that just because he wanted to, and he knew it would be good for our students and their families. So this time I want to introduce you to Claudio."
Okay, so thanks for having me today, and Reagan asked me if I could come and talk to you guys, and I didn't know it was going to be that intimidating, but I'm sure I'll be okay. So she just told me to tell you about myself and why am I here and where do I come from. So I did a small presentation. So my hometown, I am actually from Mexico City. I was born and raised there till I decided to come to America to study. I am fluent in Spanish, and my second language is English, so maybe that's why I have a weird accent for you. I have an older brother that actually came to Midwestern too. He was an RA. He graduated with a marketing degree, and then he went off to New York to do his master's in advertisement. He actually lives in California now, and the weird thing is that he's married to a girl that he met here, but they started dating when they graduated, and they were not even here anymore. All my family lives in Mexico City and the north part of Mexico, so my brother and I were the only ones that decided to come study here, and we are really happy with our decisions. So my university, I actually came to Midwestern to just try it out and see how the study abroad thing was. 4 years later, I graduated with an economics degree in 2010. After that, I went to do the banking stuff. I worked for Bank of America for a while, but I decided I didn't like it. So I came back to do my master's in business, and I graduated with that in December 2012. My brother is the one that encouraged me to come here, and I wasn't really completely sure because just to come to study here, it was like a 6 to 7 month paperwork where I had to go to the embassy and do a lot of things. So I was sometimes I got discouraged, but then when I came here and I went through everything that's happened in my life, I think it's like the best decision I could ever take, and I'm really happy with that. I work for the Residence Life office, and my official title is a complex coordinator. So what I do is I supervise the apartments on campus. So it's around 300 beds in Sunwatcher and around 282 beds in Sundance apartments. I'm in charge of 6 RAs, and I have to do like the turnover over the summer, which is like a headache, but we always have like good results on that. I support residents to achieve social and academic growth. So sometimes that can get really hard because you're trying to build relationships, but you're trying to teach them how to be successful when they graduate from college. So we try to implement social, cultural, wellness, diversity, academic growth, social justice. We try to implement those programs every month and every semester. We try to think outside the box because, I mean, I'm going to be honest, we're getting older and the students like different things that we like. So we always try, like, my RAs are doing great. We're actually having a program next week. It's going to be called The Amazing Race. And we ask international students or students with diverse cultures to help us out. So they're going to like go around campus doing activities that they're going to help us with. Some of the things that I have to do administratively is we have to be on call every week and sometimes some of the weekends. So someone has to be on call at all times, and sometimes you get to a situation where you're like, I'm not sure I'm prepared for this, but you do your best and just follow what my bosses told me to do in training, and just like make sure you solve the situation, whatever it takes, because we're here for the students, and that's what we always say. Like, if the students weren't here, I wouldn't have a job, and I do everything for them. So just like some of the things that I think are key to be successful in my area is just to try to meet as many students as possible, and then just try to help them out and teach them how to be successful in life. So those are some of the things that I do. Some of the hobbies that I have is I'm kind of a nerd sometimes. I actually like video games. I like traveling anywhere. Like, if you tell me we should go a road trip tomorrow, I will be ready to go. I actually went to Brazil for the World Cup in 2012, and I'm planning a trip to Japan in the Christmas break. I'm going to be there for like a week and a half. I've driven to Seattle. It took me 32 hours. I've been to a lot of states over here, and then in Mexico I've done like backpacking trips and stuff like that. So I really enjoy that. I like reading mystery and drama. So one of my favorite authors is the guy that wrote Fight Club. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that movie. I really like music concerts. I actually just went to a music festival a month ago, and it's just like kind of like when I need to get de-stressed, I just go to like music concerts. It's one of my hobbies, because sometimes the work I do could get very stressful, because like some incidents are like, oh my god, this is happening right now. One of my favorite bands is a Block Party. It's an English band, so I'm sure you don't know it. Last but not least, I'm a huge Chicago Bulls fan. I know they're not doing that great. Jordan retired, but I mean, they're getting there. And actually, one of my dreams came true this year when I went to see them play in the United Center in Chicago. So it finally happened. Some of my strengths and achievements: I am adaptable. I have empathy, harmony, inclusiveness, and positivity, which I think they help me doing the job I do, because I'm always have to be like empathy for like the students. I actually just had a case where I had to have a hearing with a student, and then we finished, and I gave him his sanctions, and then he came and talked to me after, and he's like, you were very mean to me when we were in there, but he's like, when we're outside the like university setting, he's like, you're always being nice to me. And I just said, the only reason that I did it is because I had the chance to teach you that what you were doing was wrong. So I'm sorry I was mean, but it's because I care about you. And I said, I'm not gonna think less of you as a person for what you did because I believe that you can do better than that. So he was like pretty happy with that. I was a founding father of the Sigma Alpha Epsilon chapter here in Midwestern. In 2012, we were colonized. I was one of the founding fathers. I'm part of Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I have a little brother. His name is Antrell. He goes to Washington Jackson Elementary, and he goes to 10th grade. He is actually the running back for the Boys and Girls Club football team, and he likes science. So, I also graduated from the Leadership Wichita Falls, 2013, best class ever. I have a dog. Her name is Lady. I got her from the Humane Society, and I've had her for 5 years now, so I'm sure we're really happy. And then one of the things that I am really happy is that when I came to the United States, I only knew like 2 people here on campus, and over the years I've grown to build relationships with a lot of people. Even like when I was in my undergrad, I had like some financial issues or like issues where like I might have like I probably had to go home because there was a lot of people that helped me, and there's actually a lot of people in this room that helped me, and I had to like go talk to and say, please help me, because if you don't help me, I won't be able to finish my college degree, and thanks to them, I'm here. So. And I am grateful to work at Midwestern because, like I said, I have met longtime friends. I feel like I can have an impact on the residents with my experience because I'm an international student and I have that experience that I've had to do all these forms and like get my I-20 and my visa and all that. So I think I can help them with that. And then even if there's something else not related to that, I feel I can help them. I enjoy the challenges that come with my work. Some of them are like really hard to deal with, but if it wasn't for the staff or for like people that help us out every day, we wouldn't be able to do it. So I am really thankful for my coworkers. And I try to give back to Midwestern every time I can. I try to be as involved as I can, go to the games, go to the soccer games, talk to the students, do programming and all that. So I love working for Midwestern. I'm really happy with what I do. And I think that's it. Thank you. Do I have to ask if they have a question?
You're good. You're good. Thank you. Jesse? Good job.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Well, first I'd like to thank you for letting me talk today and having an opportunity to speak with you. I'm glad to hear that the rec field, you're really considering the location and how that impacts the non-athletes here on campus who are contributing with the fee. I'm very glad to hear that's a positive thing. As I mentioned, I'm going to try to make this short, but as I mentioned at my last report, SJ was going to try and vamp up its PR image here on campus, and we've taken steps to do that. I can say that we're having more interaction during meetings. Our door's always open, except somehow we lost our door. So it's been shut technically, but we got to get the door stopped. But having a lot of students come in from all over, different organizations, sports teams, so it's been very positive in that area. We mentioned yesterday, we were talking about tuition revenue bond. Megan brought it up about the centralized tutoring center. Student government is going to try to pass a resolution in support of this. We do believe that having a centralized place on campus where tutoring can happen, if you're struggling in the area, you can go to this place and you can get help. Especially for, as we were talking about admission, if I did not have a very high SAT score when I entered MSU, and as a struggling freshman, it's very difficult to go find the writing lab, go talk to professors to try to lead you to the door. They do a fantastic job, but it's hard to find. And if we have a place that is marketed, that they know they can go to get help in any area, for a freshman and sophomore struggling in class, I think that would benefit them greatly. another cool thing SGA is doing this semester, next semester, is we've been very fortunate to reach out to some elected officials like the mayor of Wichita Falls, James Frank, the Texas House Representative, and Senator Craig Estes to come and speak at our student government meetings. The mayor, Barham, is coming this coming Tuesday to speak to students and just talking about why being involved in government is a big deal, and you should feel proud about that. And the last two things I'd like to discuss with you today is overall, the student perception on campus is a positive perception. Everyone's enjoying life here, but there has arisen a discrepancy in the shade of maroon, and we have a senator who's pursuing this, is very passionate about it, has about 518 signatures in order to have a discussion, about 8.5% student body, have a discussion about the discrepancy in where the colors, for all those who do not know, the shade of maroon appeared that it had switched. All it was we trademarked it and went back to our original color that we set. Over time, we went off from that color. So when we came back, students, it felt like the colors were changed and that students were not involved in the discussion. So obviously, there's going to be some upset people. Just letting you know that is a rising concern. We're monitoring it, and if it grows, then we'll have some conversations. The last thing I would like to talk to you all about is MSU values.
I'm passing it this way. We're passing it down this way.
Okay. Mine's color copy. Okay. The mission statement is great. This is more of a theoretical issue than anything else. But when we read over, I've communicated with student leaders in Greek life, resident hall, sports teams, and we're looking at the values here, and there's 9 values. They're not very concise. But the more striking thing and disheartening thing about these 9 values is leadership is not encompassed in any one of these 9 values. And I think that is a shame. And if we are not focused on leadership and teaching our students how to become leaders in this community and world, I think we're failing the students. So I would just like to bring attention to that and say that we do have student leaders who are very passionate about this and think that we should reevaluate our university values and try to encompass leadership as one of our core values here at Midwestern State. But with that, I thank you all for your time, and hope everyone has a safe weekend. Or if I could field questions, I'd love to do that.
One quick question. So, what is the leader?
What is the leader?
If not for these things that are on the page, what's a leader? Do you have to say it? Do you have to say that you're a leader to be a leader, or can you embody all these things and you are a leader?
You can embody all the things and become a leader.
I'm just wondering where, I mean, I get it. It's theoretical. But I would just, as you have those conversations, I think that needs to be a part of it.
Understand.
Something to consider.
Yes, sir. All right, with that, I thank you very much.
Thanks, Jesse. Charlie Carr, athletics.
In 8 minutes.
You hear that?
Sorry?
In 8 minutes. In 8 minutes.
Oh, I got listening.
Okay, perfect.
I've developed a reputation.
Oh, she has an agenda. She's next.
Well, I do want to make sure we understand that Ray left, but I've sent Ray over to Commerce. We need to eliminate a lion over there on Saturday. So he's going to do the work ahead of time.
Thank you.
On a very light note, well, it isn't light, but it's light. want to tell the board, make sure you understand that Dr. Shipley's resume, though I never saw it, she has a tremendous coaching background.
I do.
And has done a fantastic job with all of our fall sports.
Correct.
And that's my way of saying she has been everywhere. She's been places that I'm behind. She's done a great job of becoming closer to our student athletes, and they really take note and appreciate it. And I mean that. Our coaches really appreciate it. Topics for today, most importantly, is the Lone Star Conference. This coming year, 16-17, we will add officially Permian Basin and Western New Mexico. Dr. Shipley was very instrumental in us reviewing a new applicant in Adams State this past month. Adams State is in Colorado. They're very sincere about coming into the Lone Star Conference. There is also some discussion, actually interest in New Mexico Highlands, who is also in the same conference as Adams, coming in with them. So we have gone from a year ago where we might have lost the conference to almost an embarrassment of riches, if that can ever be said. I'm not sure you can ever be rich enough to have enough school, but it's a good problem to have, and we're looking forward to working through that.
Charlie, can I ask you a quick question? What cities are Adams State Highlands in?
Alamosa,
Okay.
is Adams State.
Okay.
Las Vegas, Nevada is New Mexico Highlands.
Las Vegas, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay.
The obvious thing about that, and I won't dwell on it, but with these new schools, we are helping ourselves tremendously in terms of scheduling. We are we are creating some real pressure on our student athletes in travel by bus. And subsequently, some real pressure on our buses and their drivers. So, just a point. Any questions about that? It's just I want to make sure everyone understands we're now in the streaming video business. All of our games are streamed. Every event we stream. If you go to our website, you can pick it, see it, watch any one of our games. Should be hopefully some fun in our basketball season, and certainly in the spring. Quick note about our fall sports. Cross country finished 14th in the region. I wish I could have brought her. Bridget Riley is a freshman, an outstanding, she will be our best runner we've ever had. She's from Sydney, Australia. So the Midwestern Mustang tentacles reach internationally, far and wide, as we all know. It's a neat story, and love to share it with you on a more specific basis. Women's soccer finished in the postseason again this year. Volleyball, as you all, I hope know, has a new coach this year, inherited a new team, same players, went through a very rough fall. And she's a great lady, going to do a great job for us, and next year will be much better. Obviously, you know our soccer team our men's soccer team is ranked second in the country. If you have nothing to do on Sunday, or even if you have something to do, come out to our soccer pitch and watch number 2 team in the country play the second round of the NCAA playoffs. This is the best team in my tenure that I've seen us have. And doesn't mean anything so you win. But we're now in win or go home mode. So if we win on Sunday, we will then move forward to the following week. We will host again the next weekend, and that will be for the chance to go to the Final Four of the NCAA. So should be a lot of fun. Our football team, you read more about them than you do our other sports, but it's the best team, quote unquote team, that we've ever had here. Not the best individuals, but the best team. Our coaches have done a fantastic job, and we are going to Commerce. We are going to show up at Commerce and play for the Lone Star Conference Championship on Saturday.
What time is that again?
That's at 2:30. It will be nationally televised. It will be televised here on Fox, at FBX. So you can catch it if you're not over there. You can catch it on at 2:30 on Fox Sports. If you're traveling, you can catch it on NCAA streamed on NCAA website. So should be a lot of fun. We got a lot of we got a few paybacks on that one. Basketball coming up. We start tonight and tomorrow with our women's team. Sunday night is our men's team opening real game, and excited about that. Both will be very good, as always. Finally, I was going to share with you as a follow-up, some of our information. Statistically, our cumulative grade point average for 14-15 for all of our student athletes, 336 of them, was 2.83. Our retention rate, we all talk about retention rate. Our retention rate was 77.3. Our 6-year graduation rolling average was 59%. So again, I think it's important for us to note not only the successes, but where we can get better. We certainly want to do that. I think I'm under the 8 minutes, or 7 or 6.
Good job.
Any questions?
Charlie, win or lose tomorrow in a football game, what are the chances of you getting to host a playoff game next week?
Good point. If we win, I think we will. Man, you never say never or ever. We should host. If we lose, we will be in. We probably won't.
Share with the board where they're ranked nationally.
Coaches poll, we're ranked 11th or 10th. I'm sorry, we moved to 10th. In the regional, we're 6th, and that's more important because that's how they rank. That's how they decide who moves forward, who's picked for the NCAA postseason. So, kudos to our football staff. They've really done a great job. And our kids, most importantly. You all will love our kids. I mean, I hope you get to know some of them. They're just great kids. They're not perfect, but they are really great kids. Okay.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right.
Dr. Shipley.
Great. So I included in your materials a report, an article from Trusteeship Magazine. Whenever I find something in Trusteeship I think is particularly good, I'd like you to read about it. What I like about this article is a lot of us in these days of tighter budgets talk about cost containment, and while the article does verify we need a good attention toward cost containment, they also write a lot about enhancing revenues and new revenue production, and we are in higher ed now more concerned with revenue enhancement also, and that ties a little bit into what I'll talk about in a moment with growth. We have not had an inauguration in a while, and I felt it was important that we have one, however modest and brief. And so I met with the faculty and staff governance representatives, and I think, Jesse, you were there too, the students, and talked about whether I'd be okay launching a very, very modest inauguration. They said sure, and I asked when, and they said, well, how about December 11th, and commencement is the next day. And I said, well, what time? And they said, well, how about 11 o'clock? And when we put the invitation together, we realized I was also the 11th president. So we will have about a 1 hour inauguration on December 11th at 11 for your 11th president in the Fain Fine Arts Theater. And we've got a nice, enjoyable program with some great music and some academic pomp and circumstance. And we've got our robes ready anyway because the next day is commencement. So I hope you'll be able to join us. The major expense of the inauguration will be that I'm inviting everybody on campus to lunch afterwards. So the Student Center will be wide open for a holiday lunch. Everyone who attends the inauguration is invited, and all the faculty and staff on campus who work here are invited, whether they attend the inauguration or not, and any students who are still here. It'll be late in the semester, but we'd be happy to have them. So it'll be a holiday lunch with all the trimmings. The next day will be commencement. My husband is particularly excited that as a fashion diva, I have attracted a speaker from Neiman Marcus, Catherine Allred Davis. I think that's a great way to break into the commencement cycle here. Dying to hear what she has to say. And so commencement will be the next day, and you'll be receiving details about participation in that. It'll be in the K. Yeager Coliseum. So let me talk to you briefly about what the campus has already heard me talk about in terms of growth. When Mike and I met, we've met several times for lunch, I promised him a number. He just wants a number around this growth thing, and it's a number that I'll be talking to the campus about Monday and Tuesday when I have open conversations with folks. I'll be meeting with the SGA also Tuesday evening. And I have been very honest that I believe it's time for us to grow a little more aggressively, that everywhere else in Texas is growing. Texas is a boom state. We need to be part of that. That boom may not last forever. Now's the time to accomplish what we can with that growth. And the number that we find really attractive would be to add 2,000 new students by our 100th birthday in 2022. Gives us a lot of time. That 2,000 students would break out in the following way. We would probably be able to attract about 1,500 in off-campus locations and another 500 on our residential campus. So we wouldn't be bursting at the seams on our beautiful but limited residential campus. It has facilities that are built already for this number, and that 500 students would be about a 10% growth over 7 years, and that's not horribly aggressive growth. It's not going to destabilize anything. But we believe that our real market is in an adult population. I have a particular soft spot in my heart for people who start a degree and life circumstances intervene and they can't finish. Many of those are women, many of them between the ages of 28 and 45. And so adult completion degrees are very attractive to working adults in urban areas. And they're very much a part of a liberal arts mission because those working adults generally already have the career preparation they need, but they can't advance because they don't have a bachelor's degree. We have a degree that we've already piloted in urban areas, not to a lot of success, but those were different times and different approaches. And that's our BAAS, our Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences. And that degree gives you kind of a scaled down version of a major because you've already been out in the world, you've already specialized in certain areas, and a very rigorous look at life experience and the curricular, the credits that you've probably accumulated in different places. So there's a lot of counseling that needs to be done before you ever launch a progress toward that degree, but it's a great degree to offer. Now, in addition to that type of degree, we'd like to offer some graduate degrees. We have a lot of popularity for our medical field. We have popularity, probably a lot of interest in our MBA. What will happen is we'll need to go out and see who our competitors are in these areas. The first place we're looking is the Alliance Corridor in Fort Worth, a rapidly growing area. We have a task force. We have hired a recruiter in that area. We have talked to real estate agents in that area. So we're actually starting to work on this because we'd like to be able to bring to you as much information as we can for your consideration of this outreach. So the dual message is we are absolutely committed to our campus in Wichita Falls and to our liberal arts mission. We believe that recruiting in other areas and serving adult students in other areas will actually have a magnet effect back to us. So let's serve the parents of students who don't know about us, who are in Fort Worth and the Dallas area. We'll have a better recruiting cycle. Based on that, our name will be out. It'll be a marketing outreach, in addition to serving the state in ways that, people aren't getting to see what Midwestern State does in these urban areas, and everybody else is out there, and I'd like to be out there letting them see what great professors and teachers we have. So those are the types of outreach you'll see. The tricky part, I think, will be lining up our timing so that we move expeditiously, but we covered the bases in terms of accreditation and review by the coordinating council and by your review. So when we're coming back to you about the athletic fields, we may also be at a point where we can come back to you about what curriculum we'd like to offer so that we can begin to shape our market research that you've approved, because we're going to need to ask, what about this program, that program, et cetera. So the calendar moves pretty rapidly in the hopes of getting us to a fall launch in Fort Worth. We may be so close we can't quite make it, but we'd love to start getting into this market before Tarleton has another location, and the Dallas schools have more locations. They're all moving toward Fort Worth, and we should be there too. I want to thank Keith Lamb and Terry Patton for co-chairing a task force, and for those of you who will be tapped to help us with this, Sam and hopefully others will be in touch. Now, how does this fit into the type of planning we'll be doing? I really rely on planning to move an institution forward, so that's why the first thing I'm doing now after the survey is go to faculty, staff, and students and roll out our strategic initiatives and get their input. I'll be coming to you with those in February. I'd like us to have about a 4-hour retreat after this meeting. So on Friday, we would adjourn over to the Pretty Conference Room. We'd have a 10 to 2 type of meeting where you'd look at our strategic initiatives that the campuses has approved and is recommending. You would look at how that impacts the facilities master plan, and we could talk about how much flexibility you see in that plan, whether you want things to move or not, and whether I want things to move or not, and then we can just get that out in advance. We're going to need a budget plan to go with that, and part of the budget plan will be a fundraising plan. So we'll talk about, are we ready for a comprehensive campaign? If not, what are our other options for funding what will probably be a fairly aggressive plan? So I look forward to those times. Part of our conversation really needs to be about diversity. These are times where the attention is turning back to diversity on campus, diversity of students, faculty, and staff, and how welcoming of a learning environment we create and how we maximize what we learn from diversity. Part of our growth will be in an enhanced outreach to Hispanic students. We have a good blend of ethnicities on our campuses, but we are probably going to set as a goal to become what's called a Hispanic serving institution in the next decade. What that does is it qualifies you for federal attention, support, and funding because you're serving a population that the federal government wants to help you support. It's often a population where you're first in your family to reach a college degree. You need more academic support. You might need more financial support, but that opens, if we reach a 25% overall Hispanic population, we will begin to qualify for the type of support and funding we need to help that population be more successful. I've already reached out to HACU, which is the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities in San Antonio, and I'll be talking with their staff in January when Charlie and I go to the NCAA convention in San Antonio. So I'm happy to take any questions. I felt like when you hired me, you wanted me to get a jump start on this. You wanted to see a plan within 6 months, and so if you feel rushed, I apologize, but that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get you a good plan with great campus input so that it's not me talking, it's all of us talking, and that's why you're hearing that I'm out and about. I'm very visible. I've interfaced with students quite a bit and faculty and staff as well. So hopefully the plan you see will be one that we've all shaped together. I think that's all I'm supposed to cover. Did I miss anything? No, that's
Well,
it.
I think that's funny.
All right.
Any questions for Dr. Shipley? Well, I have a comment.
He was going to give me a kudo. Was that a pat on the back?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Great job.
It's a number.
It's a number.
I want to make a comment because I think that, this is Dr. Shipley's first meeting, and I think, in my opinion, you've hit the ground running. And this idea of penetrating the Fort Worth marketplace, I can tell you as a resident of Fort Worth, Tarleton is trying to take Southwest Fort Worth by storm, just so you'll know. I read an article today in the Star Telegram, an editorial, as a matter of fact, that Chancellor McRaven at the University of Texas is wanting to take Houston by storm. They want to own the Houston market. So what Dr. Shipley is suggesting to us is not new. It is necessary for us to become the university that we want this to be. I want to stress something here because I can read some minds around the table and around the walls. And I heard you say it, and I want to be clear. We're not taking away from this campus. That is not the point. It's additive. And it is really, really, really important. Believe me, Chancellor McRaven would never take away from the Austin campus by penetrating the Houston marketplace. He's adding to that campus. So anyway, I think this is fantastic. I think it's great. I'm really excited about it. So onward ever. Okay, let's see here. We need to go back. And when we go back, we're going to take a break. After we go back, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to have a quick executive session, and then we'll be done. So bear with me. Let's go back.
Okay.
So we need some admissions information. Please take the head of the table.
I will try to do my best.
Okay.
Matthew Park came in unexpectedly as I was reviewing files.
Did he brief you on the questions that we might have?
Yes, sir, he did.
Okay, perfect. So we're trying to get more facts around this 25% suggestion. And I think one of the questions that's come up is, what is the cost, or first of all, what is the cost of, well, first of all, let me ask it the other question first. The other question is, so automatic 10%, right? And right now there's the suggestion for 25%. Do you have any idea what the number of students is in that 15% gap?
We can just look at what we've done the last couple of years
Okay,
in that top 25%. So just for fall of 14 alone that we admitted, we reviewed 659 students that were top 25 that we were spending extra
that
time.
Weren't in the top 10%.
Correct.
They were, so that's that 15%
Yes,
gap.
sir. Yes, sir.
So how many again?
659. The year before was 727.
Okay, that's both. Okay.
May I ask her, how many students in Texas or in the U.S. are in the top 25%? Because you're only reviewing the ones who thought we had a 10% bar. How many students would there be, the 25% in Texas alone?
I don't have that number as far as Texas.
Isn't that thousands?
It could possibly, if you're looking at the United States, but the ruling for top 10 is for Texas high schools.
No, I'm saying if we put our number at 25%, and now they can't come because we don't have that, and you're getting people who just say, I don't care what you let in, I think you might let me in. How many students in Texas are in the top 25% of their class who would then be automatically admitted to Midwestern?
I don't have that information.
Isn't that thousands?
Probably.
It's got to be.
Tens of thousands?
Yeah, it could be.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be astronomical on that.
It's more than a boatload. So the next question is, so it's 700 students. How much time does it take to review 700 students like that?
It's very time consuming for an evaluator, or I was reviewing files this morning just because of our backlog of applications. We're about 2 weeks behind in reviewing just the volume. It could take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes per file because you're reviewing test scores, you're looking at curriculum, you're looking at ranking, GPA, I mean, you're looking at everything. So it's a little bit more, so our turnaround time, which we've really prided ourselves on, is a little bit slower because of the review process.
Right.
How many people review files?
How many people are reviewing files now? That's a great question.
Right now, currently, we have one freshman evaluator that reviews, and when she's backlogged, I review.
All right. Who else has a question?
Isn't that 9 days, 30 minutes for 750? We're talking about 9 days of savings to lower our standard to 25%. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have the capacity now as far as staffing to do what we're doing now?
To do what we're currently doing now, no, we need more staff.
How many more do we need?
In processing, we need at least 2 more additional processing staff.
And if we went to 25%, would we still need that?
We would still need that on the transfer side, yeah, to help with transfer initiatives and transfer evaluation for transfer students.
So what if we go to 25%? What would we be saving? I think that's the bottom line.
Well, if we go to 25%, a lot of the review in the 20 or 30 minutes would decrease. Now we're just probably looking at 5, 6, 7 minutes, making sure they're meeting the high school plan that the state requires. We look at the rank, we move on to the next student. So, we're looking at saving a lot more can be evaluated, the turnaround time, letting the students know so that they can start making their decisions to move forward with matriculating.
How much time is that turnaround time that we'd be saving?
I would say going from 20 to 30 minutes down to 5 minutes, we could be saving anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes per file.
But okay, if I'm a freshman, I apply. How much longer does it take for me to find out I'm accepted now as opposed to if we change?
Right now, it's almost a week to 10 days before you're notified. If we switch this around, once your file's complete, we're talking a day to 2 day notification.
So a week, basically.
Yes, sir.
9 days, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I have a serious correction, which is the problem of getting information in a board meeting trying to calculate. It's 9 weeks, so it looks like you're saving something like 3 months worth of, or not, I mean, 9 weeks, not 9 days. So it looks like you're saving 4, 8, 12, 2.5 months or so of a person's time. But once again, that's the people who have sent in that you to automatically admit is a huge number.
I think and another important question along those lines would be that Keith didn't present to us. For the schools that turn to automatic admission of the 25%, did they see larger numbers of applicants from that population? And that's not something we've looked at. So we've got a group. We could go do that research. So we'll remember
It's clearly,
to ask.
so how long has Tarleton had their 50% standard? Do you know?
No, but they've also decreased their standards, their
I know.
SAT score requirements quite drastically.
Right. It seems to me that it's been at least in the last 3 to 4 years, and that has, if I'm not mistaken, increased their student population as well as their applications. So.
Yeah, they've hit record enrollments the last few years.
Yeah, I don't want to put undue stress on the professors and that sort of stuff, but if I followed the numbers correctly a while ago, we got roughly 40% what you're saying, and then if we were to go to the 25%, if I understood you correctly earlier, out of that 20, we're looking at less than 20%. That is what you would call not upper level, I guess.
We changed the definition of who would be considered academically unprepared.
Right. Okay. I couldn't remember exactly how you worded that, David. And so now I'm looking at this thinking that I see both sides of this argument, but now I'm thinking that if I heard you correct a while ago, if we accept that 25%, the ones that did come in, and the ones that didn't, they stayed away, they didn't come even though they could have come, they are now exceeding the level or the grade point average of if we stayed at the 10%. Did I hear that correctly?
For fall 14, the average MSU GPA was a 2.6. The average of the students in the top 25 that were by review admitted, so just right under our unconditional admissions, their average MSU GPA sits at a 2.7.
Okay, so they're actually overachieving, if you allow me to use that terminology. So now I've come back to the point that Sean made earlier. So if we're looking at, you're claiming 2 additional people of $100,000, roughly $100,000, that's going to hit our, coming off the finance committee. And knowing that, where's Maryland? Knowing that next year we could possibly see some deficits. So now I'm struggling with, okay, and like I say, I want to make it clear, I see both sides of this argument. I don't want to lower our mission standards, but if we're actually seeing an overachievers that do come in, then I'm really scratching my head thinking, okay, that $100,000, as Sean made a point earlier, would be better used elsewhere instead of bringing in additional people to help you. So I'm torn, but now, again, I don't want it out there that we've lowered our standards, but yet on the other side of the coin, we're seeing overachievement.
So, Mike, I guess where I'm getting maybe hung up in the weeds is
I'm down there with you. Yeah, don't you know that?
So we're saying we're lowering our standards, but then we're taking those students. So how are we lowering our standards if we're taking students already?
Because you're not taking everybody at 25%. You're taking the ones who submit, even though you told me I couldn't get in, I'm going to submit anyhow.
Right, but they said over the 4 years, there were 14 students that would have additionally matriculated during that time.
Right,
so
but
we
you
would have accepted 14 students that potentially were at risk in that range if we did it, when we already accepted the rest of them.
Right, but you're saying, okay, if I accept 25%, the top 25% of every child in the state of Texas, they don't match the statistics that they have here. The ones who submit them say, I think you ought to let me in because I'm very close or I'm very this or whatever. But if we suddenly say the top 25, the 25% becomes a rule, we have lowered our standards.
Because you're saying that if we say we accept everybody who's in the top 25%,
no matter
we have
what
to
your
accept
SAT score or ACT score is, we accept you. Then we have a huge pool we haven't sampled is all I'm saying.
No, because it seems like if we're saying like we drop it to the 25%, we're accepting them, and all those are exceptions, then there is no exception. That is the rule.
Well, now there is an argument for doing that, but I want to hear the administration say, we know these students need extra help, and we're going to add more writing centers, and we're going to have classes that help students who maybe are not remedial but are not qualified, and now we're willing to accept longer in college. I just think we haven't looked at the ramifications of that. All we've talked about is $100,000 now, and I think the expense in the long term is much greater than that.
Well, and Mike, I think to your point about the $100,000, I think I'm hearing due to the fact that, we've had enrollment increases and potentially more, they need more help anyway. Part of that $100,000 they're going to need anyway.
I understand.
Regardless.
I agree.
So I'm not sure that's an incremental cost. I think that's coming anyway, right?
There's a lot of meat in that.
Yeah.
There's to wrap my head around there.
We have 2 options here. We can go ahead and vote on this right now, or we can table this till February.
Don't you have to have a motion before we can vote?
Correct, and that's what I was getting ready to call for. I was going to call for a motion to either vote on this or we're going to table this.
I'd like to put a motion that we table it until we get more.
How important is it to decide this issue today?
A good point.
We currently have students right now that are in the top 25 category that we have in what we're calling a pending status, that we're holding on to, waiting on the vote of the board to determine what we need to do with these students. So, and these students have been applying since August 1st.
And you're in you're in your busy season right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
I need to point out that there are 2 other admissions policy items, so I guess the decision would need to be made if you table one, are you tabling all of them? That has to do with the home study program for homeschool students. And
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I don't normally do this, but I'm gonna do it here. Do we have a motion to take this admission policy changes as presented at this time?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say
No.
nay.
No.
No.
Okay. You got it?
yes,
What was the vote?
it was.
5 and 4.
I thought it was 3. Tiffany, Sam, and Mike.
Could we do a roll call vote?
Yeah, we'll do a roll call vote.
Yeah, let's do roll call.
All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? 1, 4. You can't hear me. Okay. By default, we are going to have to take it as it is. So.
Please take it as it is me, I'm new.
That means that
It
we're
doesn't
not,
pass.
it does not pass. So we're moving on.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest to the administration, if you could come up with some more information about this, I'm really willing to relook the question. I feel like that from a holistic standpoint that you need to start looking at the 25% applicant that you have as if they're an accepted student, as opposed to giving it the more detail, even if we don't have this rule, because it appears to me that the evidence shows that those people are doing just fine.
Correct.
Now, that's only the ones that are applying to us. So if we wind up with a policy at 25% and you get 300 more applicants based on that we would have to accept, and it may be a whole different ballgame. But I for one would like to see some more information about it.
And I think that's fair. I'm disappointed because it's gonna cause the admissions department to struggle at this time in the middle of their busy season. But that's the way it goes, and that's what we need to do. But to your point, we need more information. So, okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back for executive session. So if you guys could be back in 10 minutes. Discuss board item 1638B, deliberations regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property as allowed by Texas Government Code Section 551.072. For the record, the date is November 13, 2015, and the time is
11:08.
Thank you so much. Dr. Shipley, Vice Presidents, Mr. Owen, Mr. Mockham, Ms. Barrow may remain for discussion. Please, session is complete. The only items discussed were the items announced, and no votes were taken. We are now back in open session. Is there any additional action forthcoming from the executive session? If not, that concludes our business today, and this meeting is adjourned.